Hello, 8th graders. This is your study guide for your final test for the year over The Miracle Worker, the play that we've just read. Okay, so just to take you through this study guide, this will be everything that's on your test, or at least, the type of thing that you'll see on your test. The test is open notes, open play, so if you need to look at the play during the test to figure something out, you certainly can. If you need to look at this, print the study guide, I'm going to provide a file of the study guide on the English page so that you have access to that. Any notes that you want to use on the final test, you're perfectly able to do that. Not cheating. So, with that being said, here's the study guide for The Miracle Worker. Okay. So your first section of your test is going to be matching. It's going to be theater terms, so things, definitions that talk about things to do with a play or with the theater. Okay, so if the first definition, playwright, is the author of the play. The author of this play was William Gibson. Dialogue, the words that characters speak to one another. Stage directions give information about the action of the play or the character's appearance. So there are 4 different things that stage directions can do. I'll have a matching question for each one of these 4. So the thing that the words on the left-hand side will be like the matching terms, and then the things on the right-hand side will be the things that they'll match with. Okay, so 4 things. Background information, it can tell you about the character's age, appearance, or clothing that they're wearing. Character movement, tells you about where on stage the characters are moving during the play and how they're moving. So are they going upstage? Are they going over to crossing to the couch? Are they twirling in a circle? That's described in stage directions. Staging information. So what type of set is there? Costumes, props, sound effects, or lighting, that's all staging. Any parts of that are in the play are described usually in stage directions. And lastly, character emotion, so how a character says a specific line. Do they say it happily, sadly, angrily? That can be a stage direction as well. Okay? Comedy, definition of a comedy. A play that has a happy ending is the definition of a comedy. So that'll be the matching term. And then for a multiple choice question later, The Miracle Worker, what type of play is it? It's considered to be a comedy because it ends happily with Helen being able to learn language. It does have some tragic elements to it, though, so it would be probably considered a mixture of comedy and tragedy, and they call those types of plays a tragic comedy if they've got elements of both. Alright, tragedy is the other type of play. A play that ends with the downfall or death of the main character. This play obviously is not a tragedy because Helen doesn't die. Monologue, and Annie Sullivan doesn't die either. Monologue, that's the one other thing you have to finish for me this week, is your monologue project, and the definition of a monologue is a long speech given by a character in a play. Some of you have already done your monologues. You've done a great job with them. I've seen some pretty good stuff, so keep up the good work with that and get those done by Friday. Alright, the next section of the test, that'll all be matching up there, except for the question about what type of play is The Miracle Worker. That'll be a multiple choice. Other multiple choice questions that I'll put on the test will be, for one, I'm going to give you a section of quotes from the play. So I'll give you like a quote like, she can't see, she can't hear, and you'll have to tell me which character said that line. That'll be 5 or 6 questions, between 5 and 10 questions. On the multiple choice section will be quotes from characters, and you'll have to tell me who said the quote. Not who the quote is about, which character said the line. That's what I will want you to answer. Okay? So not who it's about, who said it. Alright. The inciting incident of the play, we talked about this on one of the early worksheets, is when Helen gets sick when she's a baby and loses her ability to both see and hear. Most of you got that question right on your worksheet, so good job. The climax, we talked about in Act 3, is when Helen finally makes the connection between the words that are spelled into her hand and objects. So she makes that connection when she goes to the water pump with Annie to fill the water pump, and there's that moment where she makes that connection between the water that she feels and the word water that's being spelled into her hand, and then she's able to understand that those makes that connection that Annie wants her to make between words and meaning of objects. So she gets that ability that she lost in the inciting incident of being able to see and hear sort of back, not like she isn't able to see or hear, but she's able to at least communicate with other people. Okay, foreshadowing in the play. The climax is foreshadowed when Kate Keller, who's Helen's mother, tells Annie that Helen was able to say the word "wawa" for water before she lost the ability to see and hear. So that foreshadows the water pump climax where Helen makes the connection between words that are spelled and objects. Okay, we talked about this a little bit on the Zoom, if you were on the Zoom meeting we did a week or so ago. There's an analogy, which is a comparison between two things in the play, between the Civil War and Annie's struggle to teach Helen. James, who is Captain Keller's son and Helen's half-brother, refers to Annie as a general. There are other references in the play made to the Civil War. There's a point where Captain Keller and James are having an entire conversation about battles and generals in the Civil War. This is supposed to be an analogy for the Civil War, that's in quotation marks, because it's a war. A civil war is a war between two sides that are essentially related to each other or in the same country. There's a civil war in the Keller household occurring between Annie and Helen. Annie's fighting to get Helen to behave, and between Helen's parents and Annie because they sort of disagree on how to handle Helen. This analogy gets another sort of aspect to it when James, I asked you guys what he said for grace and why he said it. A lot of you didn't know why he said it. He says that grace where he references the Old Testament of Jacob wrestling with the angel. It's supposed to be another battle comparison that's supposed to mirror Annie and Helen's fight for her obedience and for her to learn language. How does Annie teach Helen language? Well, she uses the sign language letters to spell words into Helen's hand to try to teach her language. If you watched the videos of the play, then you could see how that worked in action otherwise, because sometimes people don't quite grasp how that happened. She's using like the American Sign Language alphabet, but she's spelling the letters into Helen's hand because she can feel it. She can still feel things like through touch, and so she's trying to teach her language that way. Okay, one question that I asked you on the Act 3 worksheet too was, why is Annie not content to teach Helen to obey? If all Helen can do is obey, so she takes her to that field house for 2 weeks to teach her manners, essentially, and her parents are very impressed. But Annie wants more than that for Helen, because if she just learns to obey, then she's really not any better than a household pet. That's why the playwright uses the image of Helen teaching the dog how to spell. The dog's never going to understand language, but the dog can be like house trained, taught to obey, taught tricks and things. Annie wants Helen to be more than just a well-behaved pet who obeys, and that's kind of where her parents are happy to have her at. But she wants Helen to be able to actually communicate, like to express her ideas and be able to understand other people. So that's why she's not completely happy with just having her, have table manners and things. Okay, why do Helen's parents resist having Annie correct her when she returns home after 2 weeks? Helen's parents want to show her love and welcome her back into the house, but they really don't want to enforce the behavior that Annie's been teaching her for the past couple of weeks. So Annie's concerned, the parents are not too concerned, but Annie's concerned that she's just going to relapse into her old ways of eating off of people's plates and not having very good table manners and being a terror in the household. All right, this I need to fix the spelling on because I did not spell it correctly. All right, what event finally unlocks language for Helen? What word triggers her understanding of language? We already sort of talked about that a little bit with the foreshadowing. Water, the word wawa, that's the word that unlocks language for Helen when she's at the water pump. All right, and lastly, why is Annie Sullivan continually haunted by her brother and her past? Will her success with Helen change that? I asked you why Jimmy was important in one of the early worksheets. He's important to her because she is kind of haunted by her brother. She promised him that she would protect him, be with him forever and ever. That line keeps coming up in the play, in the scenes where she's hearing her brother's voice. But she's unable to protect Jimmy and he dies. So because of this, Helen is sort of her chance at being redeemed for not being able to protect her brother or to be able to take care of him when she promised she would. So at the end of the play, we can see that she's able to finally sort of be at peace about Jimmy. She's succeeded with Helen. She's managed to become a teacher. That's the word that Helen uses for her, is teacher. I'll probably ask you about that as well as what word she uses for Annie. I asked you about that for Act 3. So there you go. That's going to be pretty much what I cover for the Miracle Worker test. This will be the last assignment of your 8th grade year. So congratulations. As soon as you have finished the Miracle Worker test, which I'm going to post on Wednesday, and as soon as you have your monologue project done, those are the last 2 things that I need you to complete for 8th grade English. And as long as you have your AR points are in, so I only took those AR points out of 50 points this time instead of 100. You need to have at least 15 points for the quarter for that AR grade. So if you already have a 50 or higher down in the grade book, that's only out of 50 points. So 50 or higher is 100 or better. Some of you did have enough points that I was able to give you some bonus points. So 50 or higher, you've got 100% or better. Anything lower than 50 in the grade book right now, then you're missing some points, and that's how that's going to affect your grade if you don't do anything about it. Okay, so those are the last couple of things, is this Miracle Worker test, the monologue on Flipgrid, and your last journal is due today by midnight, and then your AR points. Those will be the last sort of 4 things that'll be going in the grade book for the end of the year. Well, I've really enjoyed having you guys for 8th grade. I'm sorry that your 8th grade year had to end like this. I wish we could be doing, the normal end of school things right now and enjoying celebrating your transition into high school. But just know that I've enjoyed having you guys the past 2 years, and I will look forward to seeing you around, hopefully in the fall, as freshmen. And hopefully we will be able to see each other in the fall and that we could actually be at school. So we'll pray for that. All right, just know that you're in my prayers, and have a great summer, guys. Thanks.